In this session, we're going to talk about leveraging AI for predictive analysis. It's quite a grand title for something that fundamentally is actually relatively straightforward. But what we need to do is avoid in marketing overcomplicating it. So that's what we're going to explore as we go through this session. So what is predictive analysis? It's a technique and a process that uses historical data, statistical algorithms, and machine learning, typically now, to identify the likelihood of future outcomes. So it helps us in business to anticipate things like customer behavior, optimal marketing strategies, and of course, ultimately, it helps us to improve our ROI, return on investment. So by being able to predict the future from historical data and analysis of things that have happened in the probably not too distant past, we are able to predict things going forward. And that is ultimately what we're talking about here. So a real-world example would be, for example, using AI to predict customer churn rates and then potentially developing targeted retention campaigns to keep the right, most profitable, most useful, and most valuable customers retained within your business and within your customer relationship management system. So a simple example there, using predictive data, predictive analysis, and then evaluating the things that you can do based on past performance and based on past behaviors from those customers. So in a very simple sense, that's really what we're talking about here. But obviously, when you start to look at this, it can become relatively complicated. It can become quite a complex thing with a lot of terminology that can often baffle us and almost put us off from looking into it. But we're going to simplify this as we go through this particular talk. So Datamation have come up with a range of very clearly defined here predictive analytics techniques, just so that we can identify the kinds of things, the kinds of approaches, and certainly if any statisticians are amongst us here today, this can be things that you can be looking at to use your past data, past performance, past analytics to predict the future. So things like regression analysis, data mining, and obviously clustering of the right kind of data from which we can make these decisions going forward. Being very clear with the classification models that we're going to be using. So things like decision trees and text analysis and the like will certainly be able to clarify the right kinds of data that will be feeding the decisions. And then, of course, statistical techniques like time series analysis, and potentially now using neural networks to and large language models to be able to predict from a whole subset of data and information, predict how we're going to be looking at things most profitably and most usefully going forward. Now, if you start to think about this as a human being, obviously the clarity here is going to baffle you almost instantly. So we need models and systems, and particularly now, we need appropriate AI tools to enable us on this journey. So if we are accepting of the value that the past can help us to predict the future, which is ultimately this, in the simplest terms, what we're talking about, then we know now that the selection of the right kind of AI tools will enable us on that journey. So at a very, very simple level, and probably at an entry level, and one that I would certainly advocate, is ChatGPT's Data Analyst. And this is in your sort of GPTs in the GPT store on ChatGPT. Now, the Data Analyst GPT has a real capability to give you comprehensive AI analysis of your data and of your reports. This will also have predictive analytics embedded. So once you get into using Data Analyst, you are able to enable it and allow it to analyze, to draw inference from the data that you give it. And I'll show you how you do that in just a moment. And then work with it to begin to predict the right kinds of things going forward. Now, it is not going to just tell you. This is the beauty of AI, and particularly things like ChatGPT. It is a conversation with the AI tool, so that as it begins to uncover things, you can get into conversation with it and collaboratively with your AI tool, something like Data Analyst from ChatGPT, you can then actually work with it in collaboration and co-create these good outcomes and these good evaluations and then these good decisions for how you're going to prioritize what you do next. So it's a very collaborative approach. Now, if you happen to be in a more corporate situation, there are some higher level, probably I would argue, probably deeper tools that will enable you to go a little bit deeper into more complex data sets. So Google Cloud AI Data Flow, which I'll show you in just a little while, and IBM Watson, which has been around for many, many years, but is now providing corporate level, and they describe them as corporate suite alternatives, if you like, to the more kind of entry-level ChatGPT. So we can decide at what level we want to pitch into, but I would always say let's begin with the more simple models that enable you to build up a skill set and build up the confidence that this can actually work for you. Now, if you are going to do this more manually, there are a number of different approaches that you need to take. And actually what we can do here from these typical algorithms that we use for predictive analysis, and this is the kind of stuff that the AIs are going to be doing for you on your behalf, but actually understanding some of the ways that these cross over into things that we do on a day-to-day basis in marketing enables us to get a lot closer to actually what's going on under the hood, so to speak. So common algorithms, as we've seen before, things like linear regression, decision trees and neural networks, and the factors to consider, so the types of data that we have available that we can work from, the kind of desired outcomes that we are actually looking for. So what kind of outcome are we looking for from this predictive analysis? And also the computational power. Is this something we can literally just run at a local level, or are we going to need to tap into some big computing and big server capability and run this kind of stuff, you know, in the cloud, because the amount of bandwidth or the amount of processing is going to be very heavyweight because we're working with complex and heavy data loading. So if you want to sort of think and almost bring some of this algorithm choice back into kind of marketing speak, then a real world example would be using things on a day-to-day basis like decision trees for customer segmentation and targeting. And we often use things like the customer journey, plotting that out step by step. That is actually a decision tree in the simplest sense. And then actually taking our segments of customers down different journeys. So the real world example here, this is the crossover, if you like, of the things that you might be doing, and then knowing that under the hood or within deeply embedded within the tool that you select, a similar kind of process is going on within the AI tool is probably quite a comforting thing. So you're kind of almost speaking the same language as the AI, although it will translate it into more of an algorithm sense, whereas you're going to keep this very real world and step by step. So let's begin then with the ChatGPT option here. So I've created an example. So I created, using ChatGPT, a simple sample spreadsheet with some data, some basically made up data from a marketing campaign targeting different demographics across multiple channels. So a typical kind of data set within a spreadsheet that we might be getting from our CRM system or that we might be keeping manually. So nothing complex, nothing difficult, but we're going to be using ChatGPT to have a look at this data, do some deep analysis with it, and then start to kind of figure out from that analysis what we can evaluate to take forward into the future to predict accurately what is going to happen with our future campaigns. So the data that we're going to be working from includes information such as campaign names, channels, target demographics, budgets, impressions, clicks, conversions, conversion values, cost per click, cost per conversion, and certainly ROI, which obviously the spreadsheet can calculate. So this was something that ChatGPT has created for me. I've said, give me a typical data set for a campaign. So it's come back with that. And it's enabled me to download that spreadsheet and then plug that spreadsheet back in with a prompt. Okay, so now this is me now collaborating with ChatGPT and saying, okay, based on this sample of data, just happens that you've created the data, GPT, but it doesn't really matter. It could be any data. Based on the data collected in the attached spreadsheet, create a performance comparison graph and use multivariate analysis to predict future campaign performance. So the prompt there is really quite clear to GPT. It says, I want to see a performance comparison graph, and I want you to use multivariate analysis. Now, that's a term of going deeper than just purely A/B or split testing, where you compare one thing and one thing alone. ChatGPT and the other tools are able to do what we call multivariate testing, which enables it to look at lots of different data sets. And because it has such heavier computing capability than we do as human beings, it can compare the interrelationship between lots of different data. So that's multivariate. So things that have got multiple variables, and it can analyze that for us. And then I've asked it to predict future campaign performance. So it's come up with this. It's given me a nice ROI comparison graph across campaigns, so something visual that can enable me then to take that first step of evaluation, working with the AI to hopefully predict something going forward. And then it said, okay, so here's the first part of what I've offered to you. So the graph above demonstrates and displays the ROI comparison across different marketing campaigns and gives you a nice clear visual of which campaigns perform best in terms of ROI. So a very simple thing that you might take along to a team meeting or present to your manager. So the typical thing that we're doing. So far, we haven't actually done predictive analysis. What we've done is we've said, okay, we've got a data set here that is reliable and robust, and we're able to kind of work with it now. So now GPT has said, let's proceed with the analysis. And it's gone deeper then, and it's uncovered, based on the correlation analysis, we can see the following relationships with ROI. So in other words, it's working back and reverse engineering from a great outcome. So it said the most important stuff, obviously, is ROI. We want a return on our investment of these campaigns. But the three things that come out as most significant to achieve ROI in the campaigns are budget, cost per click and cost per conversion, clicks, conversion value, conversions, and impressions. So it's given me some very, very specific data sets that are leading directly to an association with higher ROI. Now, that would, for me, make logical sense because this is actually quite a simple data set. But of course, if you're working from complex data that maybe has product information, maybe it's feature sets, maybe there's service delivery on top or as a wrapper around the product sale, maybe there's a lot of complex interrelationships between the customer's decision making, the product purchased, and then stuff that goes on post-purchase within that campaign. So it could get complicated. And what GPT's enabled here is the ability to be able to look at the ROI and say, okay, for the most profitable campaigns here, the things that have made the most difference are A, B, and C. And then what it's done is it said forecast for the next campaign. So given these correlations, the next campaign's performance can be forecasted by focusing on, and then it's broken these things down and told me then a recommended set of priorities to achieve those initiatives, to achieve those actual actions. So it is actually then step by step said, this was the data. Here I'm going to present the highlights. I'm going to take those highlights now and I'm going to do an analysis that shows you where the profitability directly came from. And it wasn't just the fact you did a campaign, it's actually some of the things you did within that campaign worked better than others. And so if you were to do it again, from the analysis, this is what I'd predict would get you even better results. So actually, as a process, it's not complicated. It's just about understanding what you want to achieve. And here it was ROI, and then helping the GPT, in this case, to actually understand where your priorities are, get some data and some value en route, and then use it to predict with an analysis and evaluation what is going to happen in a best case sense the next time you do it. Now, what is not to like for that? Because that is really enabling a deeper valuation and then a future prediction that's really going to help us in terms of improving our marketing and communications and probably ultimately sales as well. So as we collect the data and prepare it for our AI tool, in this case, ChatGPT, there's 3 steps that we need to be focusing in on. The first step is identifying relevant data sources. So you need to spend a little bit of time reflecting on, okay, what data do I have? Or it could be, what data do I need to collect? Because just because you haven't got the data doesn't mean it's not going to be useful. So this could be for the next campaign, I need to collect this data because for the next time I want to use a predictive analysis tool, I'm going to need that data. So it's about taking a few steps back and really thinking deeply about the data sources that you want. It's then about cleaning and pre-processing that data. So actually looking at the data and making sure that it's clean and fit for purpose. So are things aligned? Are things in the right places? If it was a spreadsheet, to use that as a simple analogy, are things in the right columns? Are you actually looking and reporting the same stuff in the right columns? Because of course, if this is coming from a CRM system, it may well be that data input has not been as tight as it might have been, as an example. So you do need to clean and pre-process that data. And the third thing is to ensure the data quality and consistency goes right across that data set that you're going to be putting in. Now, you might be sat there thinking, I would not have a clue where to start. So there are tools obviously out there that can help you with this. And one that I'd like to highlight, and it's worth checking out, is Alteryx, which is what we call a data wrangling tool for cleaning and preparing data. And they are looking to really showcase, if you like, that data collection and preparation is such a key step in this process, because what you put into the machine is going to control what you get out the other end. I mean, it is pretty obvious, but the AI tool cannot work with data and give you perfection if the data isn't perfect. So what they found actually in their kind of deep research into this, they've been going quite a few years under a number of different brands. And what they found is that maturity, organizations that have a higher analytics maturity, so they've really kind of focused in on their data over time, will outperform their competitors over a 10-year period in both operating income, nearly 5 times the operating income, and revenue, nearly 6 times the revenue. And the reason is that they use data maturity, so solid, well-prepared, well-envisioned data, as the foundation for their decisions. So you can use this tool, and they have a data maturity test, if you like. You can go to the Alteryx website. They've got a data scorecard that allows you to test your data for how mature and how reliable it's going to be. So that would be my recommended first step in this process, so that you can make sure the data that you're using is going to be reliable. So the next step then is implementing some machine learning here. So this is about training your AI on the historical data. So you need to be able to validate the model accuracy that you've got, and you need to be able to deploy this model for real-time predictions. So as you start to brief, as you start to prompt your AI tool, you need to be keeping a record, and I would strongly recommend you do this, keep a record of the prompt engineering that you do. Now, the reason for that is that you probably won't get this perfect first time. And by having a record of the prompts that you've done in terms of data collection and preparation, the cleaning of the data, and then the training of the ChatGPT or other model that you use on this historical data. So explaining what the data was or is, explaining how it's been captured, where it sits, really giving a strong briefing to your AI tool. And then if you can keep that, if anything doesn't quite work, or if the AI comes back with queries or it comes back with some anomalies, then you can go and revisit those prompts, tune up those prompts, because of course your outputs are only going to be as good as both the data and also the way that you train the model. So there's a kind of a reinforcement of your responsibility. You cannot expect your AI tool to just take over and almost sort of best guess what you're thinking. So you have to train it much as you would a real person, a real member of staff new to the team. There are tools obviously available for this as well. One worth having a little look at is Amazon SageMaker Studio. This is a platform for building, training, and deploying machine learning models. So it does go a little bit beyond the predictive analysis, but it helps us to understand the process that we're trying to create here. Because as with a lot of working with AI tools, the beauty actually is within the process that you take your AIs along for the ride with. So it is about data preparation. It's about storing the right kinds of features. It's about exploring any bias that there might be in the data. It's building and then training the models with some very, very clear, very accurate and precise prompts. And ask the AI also what it needs. What does it need from you in terms of the training and the learning to give you best outputs? So actually get into chat. I mean, ChatGPT, and I find myself saying this a lot, is not named ChatGPT for a mistake. This is actually for a reason. You should be chatting to your GPTs, really getting into deep conversations so that you can actually work with your AI tool collaboratively. So that's what I mean when I'm saying about training the models. It's not a one-way briefing. It's not a monologue, it's a conversation. And as you do that, then you can do the next stage that SageMaker talks about here, which is tuning the parameters. Because as you start to see, and maybe you ask for some test outputs so that you can just gauge a reaction as to whether or not the AI has kind of learned what you were hoping it would learn, but also the quality of the initial output. And then you can fine tune it and maybe take a backward step and go and retrain and have that conversation. You're then going to move into a deployment and an early prediction kind of model here. And of course, with the early prediction, so maybe this isn't the final prediction that you're looking to get out of your analysis. Maybe this is just almost like a pilot, if you like, or a test, is get your AI to actually explain the prediction. So don't just take at face value the output that comes out of this. Is go back in and say, okay, I can see that you've said I need to focus in on here on number of impressions within this style of a campaign. Can you explain to me why that is? You know, what is your inference? What was the analysis that has led you to believe that? And actually ask for more detail behind some of the explanations. And then you can manage and monitor and fine tune and improve. So it's an iterative process. This is not a one-time activity, but it is absolutely vital, as I say, that you get into the conversation and build this iteratively as you go. Now, what kinds of things are we going to be using this for? Well, obviously, for most of us in marketing and sales, it's going to be about forecasting customer behavior. So we're going to be using an analysis, if you like, of past purchase patterns. We're going to be looking at maybe social media interactions, browsing history. We're going to be looking then to take those things and hopefully then fine tune our personalization of marketing, probably also things like inventory management and potentially sales forecasting. These things are going to become much more valuable to us as we start to see some real world examples playing out. So can you imagine if you were an e-commerce platform and you were using AI in this way to predict holiday season sales spikes, which are kind of the bane of most e-commerce businesses' lives, because those spikes mean that you haven't necessarily got the right inventory or the right level of stock to, be able to serve those sales spikes. So on the one hand, the sales are coming in, so it's great, but on the other hand, the back office is struggling because you don't necessarily have the right stock or the volume of stock that you need. Of course, then when you get very distracted by these sales spikes, the personalization and maybe some of the quality of what you do goes out of the window because you're just trying to survive. So this example in the real world is a great way of seeing if you can use AI to predict some of these holiday season sales spikes, or, in your particular instance, some of those pain points where, you find it over the course of a year, some of those seasonal patterns really don't work favorably for you. They look great on paper, but as an administration function, they can be an absolute nightmare. So forecasting customer behavior and really using the analysis in a predictive way can be very, very powerful for practical things, but also then for the level of quality of service that you actually put out. And of course, as part of that, we are also then talking about the personalization of marketing communications, and particularly when it comes to campaigns. I mean, for example, if we could use predictive insights to tailor marketing messages and offers, well, I mean, the benefits of that would be certainly higher engagement rates. The perception of the customer's satisfaction would definitely go up. And then ultimately, we should really be seeing increased conversions as a result of it. So predicting the the personalization and how we can and where we should be offering a higher level of value in the customer's eyes by personalizing the experience. If we can then use AI predictive analysis to be able to do that, well, then we're going to become much more efficient, much more effective, and increase the ROI. So using something like IBM's Watson Discovery AI tool, we are able to, as IBM talk about, let's dig less, yet discover more. So it's basically about fine-tuning in a really, really efficient way this marketing campaign personalization. So when you go and look at this, it is about accelerating business decisions and processes by using AI-powered intelligent analysis and outputs. And the interesting thing about IBM Watson and their discovery tool is the fact that for most of us, when we think about predictive analysis, we're often thinking about data, we're thinking about numbers. But the beauty of IBM's Watson discovery tool is that it reminds us that we can actually be using the written word as well. So if we get comments coming back through review systems, if we get customer feedback, if we get reviews on, say, Google, for example, and obviously lots of other ways that we can be gathering textual information as well as numeric information, something like IBM Watson Discovery can also analyze and use that for predictive analysis. So we shouldn't really be constrained by our thinking. If we have a desire to personalize, if we have a desire to improve the customer experience, to get a greater conversion rate or whatever it is that you have as a smart objective, then the ability to do this predictively using past data is only limited by what we're thinking about. It's only limited by the ideas we have. The tools are there to be used now. And of course, this is about optimization. We can do this as well within customer segmentation. So pre-doing your customer journeys, it's all about understanding and identifying key customer segments who are going to be able then to be translated into personas that we can target with our sales and marketing activity. And if we're basing those on predictive insights, not just a hope and a prayer, not just on a whim, but actually doing it as a data and textual based historic record that we've analyzed to enable more targeted marketing efforts, better resource allocation, then we are going to see improved performance over a whole variety of different aspects of the campaigns and the communications that we do. So this is about really opening up the idea, opening up the thinking. And as we go through this, I've mentioned 2 or 3 times the whole idea that it is related to the marketing activities that we're doing. So when we're thinking predictive analysis, don't get caught up in just it's about the tools and I've just got to push a load of data through the tools and I'll know what I'm doing. Refer back to some of the core things that are right at the foundation of the marketing that you're doing, your customer persona definitions, your customer journeys for those customer personas, the step-by-step processes through your campaigns and your communications, the journey that they're going on. And then if you can then start to understand the data sets, the data points, the communications back from the marketplace and those customers that you can capture, then you start to be able to plot out the different steps and the different stages that may well be able to inform these predictions that we're looking for here. So Google's Stream Analytics makes data much more organized. You can use this one as well. It's accessible from the instant it's generated. This is great stuff because it builds on a whole variety of different data sources and you can plug these things in. So if you've got a CRM, if you've got front-end websites and social accounts and email campaigns that are going on. All of these things can be built into this data set that can then lead to the activation of really strong analysis at the far end. So it's about spending quality time with your data and your information. And it is right the way through your customer lifetime. So all of the stuff that we're talking about here will enable you to predict future buying behaviors, tailor your retention strategies, improve your customer loyalty, and generate a higher CLV, a higher customer lifetime value. So this stuff goes end to end. You can be picking up and getting predictive data from the start of the customer journey, those early points of engagement, right at the awareness stage, and then all the way through to some of your most loyal, some of your oldest customers, and be using those customers and the data associated with them to predict how to get more just like them. So a real world example would be, for example, a subscription service using predictive analytics like we're talking about here to identify the highest value customers and then maybe offer tailored retention incentives to them. In other words, giving them based on their performance and their data and their behaviors, giving them special VIP access to certain things, maybe discounts, some sort of loyalty incentive that enables that lifetime value to be fostered, not just from your ideas, but based on predictive analysis from what has actually worked before. And it will be analysis that you can't uncover as a human being. And by doing this, of course, then what we're actually doing is doing probably one of the most fundamental marketing skills here, which is reducing customer churn. In other words, the percentage rate of customers that you lose by not doing the things right from their perspective. So we can use predictive models like this to identify at-risk customers. Maybe you put that in. Maybe the briefing and the training that you do of your AI tool isn't just about, I need to get more sales, I need to improve my ROI. It could be about, well, let's identify maybe some customers who are at risk of leaving us. And if we can then sort of, affect some proactive engagement, do some personalized offers, improve our customer service from the feedback that they're giving us collectively, then it's going to enable us to reduce the dropout and drive retention. And as we all know, it's easier to retain a customer. Well, it's more effective to retain a customer. Well, it's more valuable to retain a customer than it is to find a new one. So if we can get this right, the spin-off benefit for us as a business is going to be absolutely huge. There are a number of different organizations providing these kinds of tools. The one that I want to kind of highlight for you here is Vitally. They've got a tool called Visibility that will unlock real-time visibility on your data, enabling you to keep your finger on the pulse. So you don't just have to do this with historic data. You can plug in, if it's relevant to you, real-time data as well into the mix. And of course, by reducing customer churn in those kind of dynamic moments where a customer is just considering a competitor or might just be on the fence as to whether to come back and, repurchase from you, if you know that's happening in real time, then you can do something about it. So you can integrate this stuff with customer service, with customer support, with those sales visits, those sales calls that, aren't necessarily being prioritized, but now they can be because you've got predictive analysis by way of these AI tools that enables you to make sure you're targeting and focusing on the at-risk customers. And can you imagine your competition doing this? Of course not. They won't. They will just be calling around like they do every month, the same customers on a month-by-month basis based on, oh, let me just schedule you in again, rather than this really precise, really personalized approach enabled by AI predictive analysis. So we are going to see, if we choose to do this, campaign performance optimization. We're going to be able to forecast campaign outcomes. We're going to be looking at things like Adobe Analytics, for example, which is a tool you can use for analyzing and optimizing your marketing performance. And we can then be using this thing to augment analysis over the top of it. So in other words, putting scenarios in. So if I was to maybe up the price mid-campaign, how would that play out based on past performance? If I was to maybe put a version 2 of this particular campaign email that goes out in 2 or 3 days' time, based on past performance, how would that affect? And it's not just guesswork, it's how will that affect in a really accurate predictive forecast the final outcome of my particular campaign. And then it will also enable you to detect anomalies. So if something happens mid-campaign and you're not really aware of it, or you've seen it but you don't know the why, then this is going to enable you to get deep into the data, coming up with reasons why that anomaly has happened. So detecting it, finding out about it, going deep in it, and then reacting to it. And of course, with something like Adobe Analytics, as you would expect, you're going to get journey visualizations. So the analytics here is going to get very personal. You're going to be able to see down to an individual account or customer level if there's an anomaly, if there's a risk of churn, if there's a risk that the person has unsubscribed. Whatever is happening here, you can deal with it. Real-time insights to find the deepest, most actionable views into helping your customers. And of course, by default, this is actually going to help the relationship too. So by optimizing your campaign performance, by getting closer, more intimate with your customers through these AI tools and the predictions that they enable, you are going to get far deeper customer relationships. And this would be, should be, can be something that you can build into your continuous improvement plans. Regularly updating these models with new data, monitoring the performance, gathering feedback, enables you to continuously improve. So right at the outset, I said, it's really important that you don't see this as a one-time activity. Getting into conversations, co-creating these models, thinking about the processes, uncovering what it is you'd really like to know, and then acting on it is a continuous improvement journey. H2O.ai is a really interesting platform here for continuous model improvement and monitoring. I mean, as an example, something like H2O.ai would enable something like an online retailer to continuously improve, for example, fraud and scam detection, complaint summarizing, recommendation engine, and even price modeling. So there's a whole range of things you can do here in collaboration with these tools. And even if you're not into those kinds of sectors, if you can just think of some of the ways that they are actually building their capability, then you can do your own local translation of that and figure out how you can use it for your own good. And what we're seeing here in continuous improvement through something like H2O.ai's model is this idea of converging the world's best predictive and generative AI. That is what their model and their platform claims to do. But actually, if you think about it, even if you don't choose them, what a great mindset, what a great mantra that we can be following. Continuous improvement is thinking about convergence of data, convergence of information, bringing sales and marketing together to use the same common language to improve customer experience and sales numbers. So we can think about this word convergence here. As we use predictive analysis to drive our business forward, if we think about the conversion of information, of data, of analysis, and of people within our organization, then we can, as H2O described here, supercharge human productivity. Because we can do this at scale, thousands of computations, thousands of pockets of analysis going on within a microsecond, far quicker than we could ever do it, enabling us then to do the higher value evaluation and improvements of customer experience. So we can take this information and then we can act on it with confidence. So to round up, I would just give you 3 next steps of where you can now take your journey in predictive analysis to improve your marketing, sales, and ROI. Select appropriate AI tools. So choose tools like ChatGPT, IBM Watson, Google Cloud AI, or Amazon SageMaker for predictive analytics based on your specific needs and capabilities. Keep it simple to start with, don't go too deep into it, and get some quick wins so that you can build confidence and your skill at actually working with the tools. Prepare and analyze your data. Collect and, as we said earlier, pre-process and clean your data. You can use tools like Alteryx and then apply relevant predictive algorithms to uncover actionable insights. Do that by being very clear on the outcomes that you need. If it is, I need more sales, brief that in your prompt engineering. If it is, I don't want to lose any customers next month, then that's your goal. So be very, very clear so the AIs can work and reverse engineer back from what it is you actually need. And then step 3, implement and optimize. Deploy your predictive models, monitor their performance, and continuously improve them with platforms like H2O.ai so that you can enhance customer engagement and marketing ROI. Because ultimately, leveraging AI for predictive analysis is all about improving your marketing ROI.